I've been looking forward to John 13.
But we're going to be in James.
We'll touch on James, I'm sure. It's just,
I know we will.
it's hard for me to get through anything without doing it. This section of Scripture is really special to me because all the crowds are gone. It's just Jesus and the 12. And there's a little bit of Peyton Place going on because Judas is at the table and Jesus knows and Judas knows and the rest of them don't know. There's some visual aids going on with Jesus washing feet and challenging them to be servants. So there's just a lot of stuff going on at the table. So having this, kind of right after Thanksgiving is kind of a good timing, because when you're around the table with family members and the conversation starts flowing, right? We don't have everything that everybody else said. We've got little snippets. But we've got Jesus kind of head of the table telling people how things are and what they need to be looking for. And it's just a fantastic passage. From here all the way through to 19, it's just Jesus and the apostles, mainly just a section of them having dinner together and what he thought they needed to know on that last night before he was arrested. All right. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. I don't know of any passage in all the Gospels that I like better than that. This is not just Jesus telling a group of guys what they have to do and, like they're employees or, also rans. He loved these guys. This was an extended family meal, and Jesus wanted to make sure that they were okay before everything happened that was going to happen that night, because they still don't know. They don't understand what's about to happen with Jesus. And he's trying to gently but firmly make sure that they're ready for what's about to happen. You notice that it says that he knew that the hour had come. Right? So how many times have we seen leading up to this where Jesus said, my hour has not yet come. My hour has not yet come. Well, now the hour has come, which gives us a really good hint as to what he means. Right? It says, for him to leave this world and go to the Father. What route does he have to take to leave this world and go to the Father? Right? He's got to go to the cross. So he knows that. He's prepared for that. He's getting ready for everything that's going to happen tonight and all day tomorrow with his execution. But again, the disciples don't know, but Jesus did know. It was his time. I went and looked to make sure what the word for love is here. He loved his own because he had always loved them. He loved them to the end. There's lots of Greek words that are translated love, all the way from eros, which is kind of an erotic, what can I get out of you type of love. I love you because you've got stuff I want, all the way to agape. And agape is, I've got stuff that you need. How can I fill you up with the stuff that you need? Well, in between, there's storge, which has to do with parental love, like the stork. And there's phileo. And phileo is the word for brotherly love, like Philadelphia. Right? So I thought maybe having loved his own that were in the world, he loved them to the end. Maybe it was phileo, it was a brotherhood, that he loved them like brothers. It's not. It's agape. It's the strongest, most serving form of love as far as the Greek language was concerned. Verse 2, the evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. And I want us to run real quick to Matthew 26. I wasn't sure on this. I had to do a little thinking and looking as to whether Judas had already sold him out. During the Last Supper, in fact, John records it, he tells John, what you need to do, go do it. And we're told that everybody thought he was just going to go buy more bread, that maybe they were running low on supplies, and that Judas was going to go take care of it. But here's a couple of days before this, chapter 26, verse 14. One of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. So this is a couple of days prior to this evening event, which means that Judas has been walking around with the 12, walking around with Jesus with that money for a couple of days. Right? Whether he had it on his person or whether he had stashed it somewhere, but he's already been paid for Jesus to turn him over. Over in Zechariah 11, let's look at that one too. Kind of an interesting prophecy. It's the next to the last book in the Old Testament. Zechariah, Malachi. Zechariah 11, and beginning in verse 12. I told them, if you think it best, give me my pay, but if not, then just keep it. So they paid me 30 pieces of silver. And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, the handsome price at which they valued me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them to the potter at the house of the Lord. And if you're familiar with the end of this, Judas realizes that Jesus has been turned over to be crucified, and it tears him up. And he takes the money and tries to give it back to them. And they won't take it back because, they said, well, it's the price of blood. We can't put that back in the treasury. So he throws this money into the temple courts and goes out and hangs himself. They take the money that he's thrown back into the temple and they buy what's known as a potter's field, a place where you would collect clay. And they used it just bury strangers there. So Judas, he's very much a part of this last meal. I don't think the disciples knew it, but he's a central character. John, looking back, goes, okay, Judas was in the room. He had already sold Jesus out. We just didn't realize all that was going on with him. So I did a little more looking about Judas and his money. The coins that he would have been paid with may be the reason that Jesus went ballistic when he first got to Jerusalem and turned over the money changers' tables. The only money that they would take at the temple was a silver currency from Tyre. Now, Tyre was a Syro-Phoenician city up the coast, almost to, I guess, kind of on the way to Turkey if you went around the corner. Anyway, they were not us. They were not Jews. They were not believers. And their money had a picture of Melkark, which is kind of an early facsimile of Hercules. So later on, he was the patron god of their town, but it was about 90% pure silver. It was really good money, and that's what the temple folks wanted to have in their treasury. So when you got to the treasury, you had to trade in whatever other money you had to get those silver drachmas so you could put them in the collection. So Judas probably got paid with money that had a picture of an idol, a false god, on the front, and a picture of an eagle, which was the symbol for Rome, on the back. So he got 30 of those. And the temple magistrates, the people in charge, the priests, they were buying and selling things with money that had an idol's picture on it. So maybe that's why Jesus was so upset. You've turned my Father's house into a house of sin, a house of sales. So Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, was there as well, and he had already sold Jesus out. Verse 3. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Now, if you read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, do you find foot washing? Just do your head this way. No. Those three center in on the Last Supper. They center in on take, eat, this is my body. Drink from this, all of you. This is my blood given for the new covenant. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are more interested in that ceremonial part of the meal. John says he got up and he got a basin and a towel and started washing people's feet. Now, the way they sat in those days, you had the table in the middle, and everybody was on their left elbow, reclining at the table with their feet sticking out. So Jesus is going around the pinwheel, right? You could almost say the clock. There's 12 of them, right? So he's going around the clock, and he's just starting to wash feet. Why was he able to do that? It's in the text. We don't have to guess.
I don't understand your question.
Okay, let me read Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. He knew who he was. He didn't have to worry about being a servant. He knew who he was. Right? This is the secret. This is as a Christian, can I be a servant like Jesus is a servant? Well, you can if you know who you are. If you realize that you're a child of God and that you've been saved by grace through the blood of Jesus, and there's nobody that can take that away from you. There's not a human on the planet that can undo what God has done in your life. If you know that, then you can be a servant. You don't have to worry about people taking stuff from you if you're already giving it to them of your own free will. Right? Nobody can steal from you what you give them of your own free will. So Jesus knew who he was. He knew he was getting ready to go back to the Father. So he takes off his outer cloak, puts on a towel, says, I'll just wash your feet. Let me teach you a lesson while we're here. Right? So he's going around the table and he's washing the people's feet. Verse 6, he came to Simon Peter. You know before you read anymore, don't you? He came to Simon Peter. And Peter said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Now, he starts with a question, which is not a bad question. You know, do you really intend to do this? Are you going to wash my feet? And Jesus replied, you don't realize what I'm doing now, but later you will understand. That's the key, that's the theme for this evening's meal. Right? You don't get it yet, but I'm going to try to explain it to you. And then later on, the Holy Spirit's going to come, and then you'll understand. So Jesus tells Peter, what I'm doing now, you're not going to understand this, but later on, you will understand. So far, Peter's just checking, right? Are you really going to do this? Can you explain yourself a little bit? Verse 8, no, said Peter, you will never wash my feet. Now Peter's being Peter. You remember when Jesus said, I'm going to go and they're going to turn me over to the Gentiles and I'll be crucified and raised again on the third day. And Peter said, Lord, it'll never happen like that to you. And Jesus said, get behind me, Satan. You're only thinking about worldly stuff. You're not thinking about things of the kingdom.
But Peter loved Jesus.
Oh, mercy,
His
yes.
best friend. Just be like me saying, you're not going to hurt her. I just, fight. And everybody throws stones at Peter for acting that way. I don't. I see him as being the most loyal
Oh,
of
yeah.
all friends. He's still bashed.
Well, I'm going to bash him some more, but he was definitely, of all the turnarounds in that group, you can see it more clearly in Peter than a lot of the other guys, right? We don't see Andrew talking back, but he became a great apostle and did great things for the kingdom, and so did the other 10 that were here and not Judas. But Peter's Peter, and he's so convinced that he's got it figured out. And Jesus says, you just don't get it. And then the punchline, Jesus answered and said, if I don't wash you, then you can't have any part with me. Well, that changes everything, because Peter doesn't want to be excluded. He doesn't want to be set aside. He wants everything Jesus can give him. He wants to be part of this thing. So his answer is, Lord, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. Just give me a sponge bath, Jesus. Just whatever you want to wash me. And Jesus says, those who have had a bath only need to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean, and you are clean, though not every one of you. For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said, not everyone was clean. So John brings us back to focus on Judas again. Right? Doesn't say his name, but he reminds us that Judas is at that table. And Jesus is working his way around. Now, washing Peter's feet might not have been a big deal. Washing John's feet, right? I'm teaching you a lesson. I'll give you the punchline here in a minute. But can you imagine Jesus washing Judas's feet? And just like the other 11, right? He just pauses there and takes the towel and washes his feet and dries his feet off, just like he did everybody else. Nobody in the group would have gone, oh, something's going on with Judas. They never figured it out until everything had been said and done. So Peter almost gets fired on the last night. You know, if I can't wash your feet, then you can't have anything to do with me. Peter's like, oh, no, I want everything. Just do whatever you need to do. And John says, no. The rest of them just needed their feet washed, but there was something way worse with Judas, something that went a whole lot deeper. I think everybody is familiar with just their custom of washing people's feet. They rented this upstairs, I would call it a hall, basically, like this, a big open space above a residence. And they had rented that for the sake of having their Passover meal. But they probably didn't rent servants to go with it. So when they come in, you know, it's just the guys. And none of the guys said, oh, well, let me play the part of the servant. Let me wash everybody's feet. You know, Peter wasn't lining up to get the water dish and the towel until Jesus starts washing feet. Everybody's just going to eat with dirty feet. They're not, you know, nobody's going to do anything until Jesus starts this. And then Peter's backlash. And Jesus has to get his attention again. And again, we talk about Judas. Not everybody is clean because Jesus knew who was going to betray them. Verse 12, when he finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I've done for you? He asked. And the answer is, no, not really. We get that you washed our feet. They might have even gotten an inkling of, okay, Jesus has showed us about being a servant. But usually this bunch goes through a section of thought that's something like, he must be mad at us because we didn't get servants to wash our feet. Or one of us should have done this, and now he's trying to show us up. Remember, like they come to him and he's been talking to the woman at the well, and they want to know if he's eaten anything. And he says, well, I have food to eat that you don't know anything about. And then they're upset because they think he's mad at them because they didn't bring enough bread. They always had that little bit of, what if we didn't get this right? Now Jesus is upset with us. Maybe they understood a little bit, but not much. But he explains to them, verse 13, you call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I've set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Verily, very truly, verily, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. If you do what?
Serve.
Be a servant, right? I've showed you how to be a servant. I'm your master, and that's no argument there. That's exactly who I am. But if I can serve you, then you can serve each other. But he keeps using this devotional visualization, visual aid to talk about it. If I can wash your feet, then you can wash each other's feet. When I was in Franklin 30 years ago, myself and a couple of the deacons were doing the devotionals on Wednesday night, and there we met in the auditorium on Wednesday night. So we had a little podium and the usual, like you would think, 2 songs and a prayer and a devotional thought. And I brought a weed whacker, I think it was, one Wednesday night, and did a devotional about something that had to do with the weed whacker, and I don't remember now what it was about. Well, one of the deacons decided he would take up the challenge. So the next Wednesday night, he showed up with a rod and reel and with a plug on the end. He's casting and winding, talking about being fishers of men, probably. Somebody showed up with a lawnmower. Somebody showed up with a shotgun. We had all kinds of stuff, but everything was a visual aid there for about 6 or 8 weeks. I think we finally just ran out of one up that we could do for the other guys. Jesus' visual aid is, I just washed all of your feet, so now I've got your attention. Let me tell you what that means. Does that mean that we need to wash each other's feet? Literally. Now this, again, the other 3 talk about, take, eat, this is my body, drink all of you from this is the blood of the new covenant. And we do that every Sunday. John doesn't talk anything about those things. He talks about, if I can wash your feet, then you should be able to wash each other's feet. Should we have foot washing? And if you know somebody that worships in a foot washing church, that's where they got it. Right? It's at the Last Supper. He even washes Judas's feet, so you can even wash bad people's feet if they're in church. Has anybody ever been in a foot washing service? Nobody? Nobody does it. There are a few groups. My sister worshiped with one for a while. I think the group she worshiped with was Old Regular Baptists. Might have been a different name. But they took communion and did foot washing, I think once a quarter or once a month. And she said you always knew when it was communion foot washing day, because all the men would be sitting on one side and all the women would be sitting on the other side, because the men would wash men's feet and the women would wash women's feet. And I thought, well, that's, that all makes sense. But they did it occasionally, but not all the time. Other than that, I've never run across a group that on any regular basis does foot washing. The thought of it makes sense. And if you do it, if we did it, there would certainly be a sense of intimacy and differentness that you'd remember, right? So when Jesus does this act to the apostles, they're going to remember that Jesus did that. But there's nowhere else in the New Testament where we've got folks washing each other's feet. The church at Jerusalem took good care of each other. They usually sold possessions and brought money in for folks that were too poor. They took care of each other physically like that. There's no other place that says they got together on the first day of the week to break bread and wash one another's feet. We don't have that passage anywhere else. But I do find it interesting that he uses this example and then says, well, if I can wash yours, then you should be able to wash each other's. Meaning, if I can serve you, then you can certainly serve each other. And again, as far as I know, as far as I can tell, every one of the apostles was around the table when this was happening. So the beginning of this dinner, right, the very intro to how are we going to spend our time together this last night, is Jesus as a servant washing feet. So that sets the stage for everything else that's about to happen. A messenger is not greater than the one who sent him. So you 12, this doesn't make you greater than me because I washed your feet. But, I've told you before, the one that would be the greatest among you has to become the servant of everybody. So if you really want to be the head honcho around here, learn how to serve. There's two folks in particular that come to my mind that needed that sermon, maybe even more than Peter. Anybody know who I'm talking about? James and John, the brothers, the sons of Zebedee. Those two, on several occasions, tried to work the system to show that they were more important than the rest. Now, when the big three was Peter and James and John, right? So we've seen Jesus and Peter interact on this evening, but we don't see James and John. But James and John came to Jesus and said, when you come into your kingdom, could one of us sit on the right hand and one of us sit on the left? We want to sit at the head table. We want to be where everybody can see that we're with you. And Jesus says, well, you'll be taken care of, but that's going to be up to my Father who sits on my right and who sits on my left. Well, another passage says that they sent their mother, which would be Jesus' aunt. And so she comes to Jesus and says, I want to ask you a favor for my sons. And so, I don't remember, is her name Salome maybe? Anyway, she comes and addresses Jesus the same thing. Could you maybe work it out so that James and John are on your right on your left? And Jesus, that's not mine to give. But James and John needed to have a lesson about wash people's feet. So the guy who wrote this remembered it well when he's writing about it. And surely as he got older in his ministry, he became a servant like Jesus was a servant. Any more thoughts about any of that?
If Jesus would have said yes to James and John, then wouldn't there have been a fight who's on the right?
Oh, probably. Yeah. And there probably would have been a gang fight with the rest of the disciples. They all knew. I mean, it wasn't a big secret that there was this kind of cliquishness going on among the disciples. It's when you think about churches in general, churches mimic the way the apostles were in a lot of ways. There's always somebody who's just gung-ho and you have to kind of grab them by the shirt tail and slow them down a little bit. That might not be the best thing for us to do right now. And there's always some that want to be the most important, who want to be seen by everybody. There's some that are really quiet, but they get a lot done. So when you study the apostles, you see kind of a microcosm of the way the church ended up being. But yeah, James and John were different. Peter was different. But they're the three that Jesus let more inside than the other 9. Peter, James, and John got to see stuff that the rest of them didn't get to see.
In life, don't you see Peter in the boat saying, we're going to fish over here, you pull that net over here? Mm-hmm. It wasn't just with Jesus. I picture him as...
he's type A plus. Absolutely. Anything else? Hi, Todd Miller. I love you. See you later.